All right, so today we're uncorking one of the most celebrated wine styles in the world, Bordeaux blends.
Ah, yes. It's fascinating. It started as a very regional thing back in Bordeaux, France, obviously. It's kind of become a philosophy,
Mm,
like a way of thinking about how to blend specific grapes
yeah.
to make something really special.
Yeah. We'll be pulling some excerpts from Cordon Bordelais for this deep dive. And I think it'll be interesting to see, kind of.
Mm.
I mean, the history of Bordeaux blends. Those winemakers back then, did they know they were creating something so iconic? I mean,
It's tough to say for sure, but what we do know is that they were definitely onto something.
mm,
I mean, these weren't just random mixes. It was a deliberate quest to create balance and complexity. Think of a symphony. Each grape plays a specific role, but together they create this harmonious whole.
okay, so
Yeah.
picture this, right? It's the 17th century, vineyards stretching across the rolling hills of Bordeaux. Winemakers start to realize that by blending specific grape varieties, they can create wines that are not only delicious, but can age for years, even decades.
And that firmness, that ability to age gracefully, a lot of that comes from Cabernet Sauvignon, often considered the backbone of a Bordeaux blend.
Cabernet Sauvignon, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the anchor, right? It gives the blend its staying power. But I know Cabernet Sauvignon. It can be a bit bold on its own, can it?
You're absolutely right. Sometimes you have a Cabernet Sauvignon, and it can feel a bit too tannic. Well, that's where Merlot comes in.
Uh-huh.
It brings those beautiful cherry and plum flavors, but it also smooths out the tannins, creates a more approachable, velvety texture.
So Merlot is like the peacemaker. That's interesting, though. Wouldn't too much Merlot make the blend, kind of,
Yeah.
lose its structure?
That's a great question. It's all about balance, right?
Mhm.
Too much Merlot and you might lose that backbone. That allows the wine to age. The winemaker really has to find that sweet spot
Right.
where the Merlot softens the Cabernet Sauvignon without overwhelming it.
Yeah. It's fascinating how each grape has such a distinct role to play. What about Cabernet Franc? Some people say it's the key to complexity in a Bordeaux blend. Do you think that's true?
I think Cabernet Franc's definitely a key player. It adds those subtle layers, a hint of spice, a whisper of floral. It keeps you coming back for another sip. Think raspberries, maybe a touch of bell pepper, sometimes even a violet-like aroma.
Okay. So we've got our star players, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc. But I know there are other grapes in the mix, too,
Right.
like this supporting cast, so to speak.
Exactly. Petit Verdot, Malbec, Carmenere, they can all make an appearance. Petit Verdot adds color and tannin. Malbec brings those dark, inky fruits. And Carmenere can contribute a unique peppery spice, especially in Chilean blends.
Oh, interesting. Now, those bold flavors of Cabernet Sauvignon. Well, the soil that it grows in can actually make a huge difference. And that's where terroir comes in. The soil,
Yeah.
the climate, the topography. It's like the wine's unique fingerprint.
Absolutely. And even within Bordeaux itself, different areas will produce different styles of blends. On the left bank of the Gironde River, you have gravel soils which drain well. This is Cabernet Sauvignon territory. Powerful, structured wines.
And on the right bank.
On the right bank, clay and limestone soils dominate. Clay retains water, creating a slightly cooler environment that's perfect for Merlot to shine. You get these smoother, more elegant wines.
So even within Bordeaux,
Mm-hmm.
you have these distinct personalities emerging from the land itself. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Bordeaux-style blends have gone global. What sparked this worldwide embrace?
It really is a global phenomenon. And it all started with a little rebellion in Italy. Winemakers in Tuscany, they decided to buck tradition and started using those classic Bordeaux grapes to create what we now know as Super Tuscans.
Right, wines like Sassicaia, Tignanello, or Nalaya,
Yeah.
some of Italy's most sought-after bottles. They basically said, we're going to use these grapes
Yeah,
and create something amazing, even if it breaks the rules.
exactly. And they did. It was a bold move that challenged the established order and showed the world that the Bordeaux blend could thrive outside of France.
Okay, so we've got Italy. What about the USA? Did the blend find a home there, too?
Definitely. California, especially Napa Valley and Sonoma County, they embraced the Bordeaux blend, crafting bold, fruit-forward wines that rival those from Bordeaux itself.
And I've heard Washington State make some pretty amazing Bordeaux-style blends, too.
Washington is a fascinating example. It has a cooler climate than California, so you get these elegant, more restrained expressions of the blend. It's a great illustration of how adaptable this blend really is.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. Italy, the U.S. Where else has this globe-trotting blend landed?
Well, Australia has welcomed the blend with open arms. Take Margaret River, for example. Its maritime climate with cool ocean breezes allows Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot to ripen slowly, developing complex flavors while retaining freshness and acidity.
Wow, when you think about all the factors that go into a Bordeaux blend, the grapes, the terroir, the winemaker's choices, it's no wonder these wines are so captivating.
Absolutely. And speaking of the winemaker's choices, that's where assemblage comes in. The art of blending. It's the winemaker's moment to shine, carefully choosing each component to create that perfect expression.
So it's more than just dumping different wines together.
Much more. It's like conducting an orchestra of flavors. The winemaker tastes each individual lot of wine, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and so on, looking for specific qualities that will contribute to the final blend.
So they're looking for balance, harmony,
Yeah.
complexity.
Exactly. And they might ask themselves, does this blend need more structure, more fruit, more acidity? And then they'll start experimenting, adjusting the proportions of each grape variety until they achieve their vision.
It's like a giant puzzle where they're searching for that perfect click when all the pieces fit together.
That's a great analogy. And we have to remember that each vintage, each year's harvest, will be slightly different. A warm year might call for more Cabernet Sauvignon to provide structure, while a cooler year might benefit from a higher proportion of Merlot to add fruitiness and softness.
This is making me realize there's so much more to a Bordeaux blend than meets the eye, or should I say the palate.
You're absolutely right, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of flavor waiting to be explored.
Okay, so we've journeyed from the rolling hills of Bordeaux to vineyards across the globe. And now I'm ready to unravel this mystery of assemblage. It still feels a bit like magic to me.
Oh, it is a fascinating process, a dance between science and art. The winemaker carefully selects and blends wines from different grape varieties, vineyard blocks, even individual barrels, all to create a wine that's greater than the sum of its parts.
I'm all ears. Walk me through it. How does a winemaker even know where to begin?
Well, it starts with a deep understanding of the individual wines. Each grape variety, each vineyard lot, will have its own distinct personality, its own aroma, flavor profile, tannin structure, acidity. The winemaker needs to know these players intimately.
So they taste each component separately, really getting to know its strengths and weaknesses. It's kind of like an artist studying their palette of colors.
Precisely. And then they begin to imagine how these individual components might work together. Does this Cabernet Sauvignon need a touch of Merlot to soften the tannins? Could a dash of Cabernet Franc add some lift and complexity?
So assemblage is about bringing out the best in each grape while creating a harmonious whole. But what guides these decisions? Is it purely instinct, or are there more concrete factors at play?
Well, there are definitely some guiding principles. The vintage plays a huge role. In a warm year, grapes ripen fully, developing rich tannins and concentrated flavors. So the winemaker might choose to emphasize Cabernet Sauvignon in the blend to showcase that structure and intensity.
In a cooler year.
A cooler year might yield grapes with brighter acidity and slightly less tannin. In this case, the winemaker might increase the proportion of Merlot in the blend, adding some roundness and fruitiness.
So it's about adapting to the hand that nature deals you, shaping the blend to reflect the unique character of the vintage.
Absolutely. And then there's the style the winemaker is aiming for. Some Bordeaux blends are meant to be enjoyed in their youth, vibrant, fruit-forward, and approachable. Others are built for the long haul, with firm tannins that will soften and integrate over decades of aging.
So if a winemaker wants to create a more age-worthy wine, they might lean towards a higher proportion of Cabernet Sauvignon, knowing that those tannins will provide structure and longevity.
That's exactly right. They're crafting a wine that's not only delicious today, but has the potential to evolve beautifully over time.
Now, throughout our deep dive, we've talked about terroir, the soil, the climate, everything about the place where the grapes are grown. How does terroir impact the blending decisions?
Terroir plays a crucial role. Think about it. Even within the same region, different vineyards will have subtle variations in soil type, sun exposure, elevation. All of these factors influence how the grapes ripen, the flavors they develop, the overall structure of the wine.
So a winemaker might choose to blend wines from different vineyards to capture a wider spectrum of flavors and aromas.
Precisely. They might blend a wine from a hillside vineyard, known for its concentrated fruit, with a wine from a valley floor vineyard, known for its elegance and finesse. It's all about layering and complexity.
This is making me realize that assemblage is a constant dance between adapting to the vintage, expressing the terroir, and achieving the winemaker's vision for the final blend.
Exactly. And the blending process itself is a journey of discovery. The winemaker might start with a base blend, let's say 70% Cabernet Sauvignon and 30% Merlot, and then they'll start experimenting, adding a splash of Cabernet Franc, a touch of Petit Verdot, tasting and evaluating, until they find that perfect harmony.
So it's a bit like composing a symphony, starting with a basic melody and then adding layers of instrumentation to create a richer, more nuanced sound.
That's a great way to think about it. And just like a composer might use different instruments to create different moods and textures, a winemaker uses different grape varieties to add layers of flavor, aroma, and structure.
Now, we can't forget about oak. It seems to have a pretty big impact on the style of a Bordeaux blend.
Oak aging adds a whole other dimension to the wine. The type of oak, the toast level, the age of the barrel, all of these choices influence the final aroma, flavor, and texture of the wine.
Okay, break that down for me. What kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, imagine 2 barrels of Cabernet Sauvignon, one aged in new French oak, the other in older American oak. The wine aged in new French oak will likely have those pronounced vanilla, spice, and toasty notes. We associate with oak aging. The wine aged in older American oak will be more subtle, with softer, more integrated oak flavors.
So the type of oak and the age of the barrel can really shape the personality of the wine. And what about the length of aging? Does that matter?
Absolutely. A longer aging period allows the wine to mellow, the tannins to soften, and for those complex tertiary aromas, leather, tobacco, cedar, to emerge. Some Bordeaux blends are aged for 18 months, others for 2 years or even longer. It all depends on the desired style of the wine.
So the winemaker is making all these decisions, from the vineyard to the barrel, to shape the final expression of the wine. It's amazing how much artistry goes into a single bottle.
It really is a testament to the winemaker's skill, vision, and deep understanding of how all these elements interact.
Now I have to ask, with all these choices, is there ever a moment when a winemaker thinks, okay, this is it, this is the perfect blend? Or is it always a process of ongoing refinement?
That's a great question. I think there's always a sense of striving for the best possible expression of the wine. But there's also a point where the winemaker says, this is it. This blend represents the essence of this vintage, this terroir. My vision as a winemaker?
Like the artist signing their masterpiece.
Exactly. And while every vintage presents its own challenges and opportunities, that moment of finalizing the blend is a culmination of all the hard work, the passion, the artistry that goes into creating a Bordeaux blend.
Well, I'm thoroughly impressed.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to put all this knowledge into practice. Let's move on to the tasting experience itself and how we can best appreciate all the nuances that go into a Bordeaux blend. Okay, so we've explored the history, the grapes, the art of blending, but now it's time to siddle, bring it all home, right? To that moment when we finally get to swirl, sniff, and sip a Bordeaux blend. I'm ready to put all this knowledge into practice.
I'm ready to guide you. Remember, it's about engaging all your senses. Sight, smell, and taste. And noticing the details that make each wine unique.
I'll admit, sometimes I get a little intimidated by all those wine tasting terms. What should I really be paying attention to?
Well, let's break it down. First, just take a look at the wine, tilt your glass against a white background, and observe the color. What do you see?
Okay, I'm seeing a deep ruby red, almost like a garnet.
Excellent. That deep color is a good indicator that we're dealing with a wine that has some age on it. Younger Bordeaux blends will be more of a vibrant ruby red, and as they age, they'll take on those garnet and brick-like hues.
Oh, interesting. So the color can actually give us clues about the wine's age.
Absolutely. It can also hint at the grape varieties used in the blend. Now, give the wine a swirl in your glass. This helps to release those aromas. What do you smell?
I'm getting blackcurrant. Definitely some cedar, and maybe a hint of tobacco.
Those are classic Cabernet Sauvignon aromas. And remember how we talked about oak aging? You might also pick up hints of vanilla, spice, or tastiness from the oak.
Yeah. I think I'm getting a little vanilla in there too. Now for the best part, the taste.
Take a sip. But don't just gulp it down. Let the wine coat your palate. And think about the texture. How do the tannins feel?
It's definitely got some grip, but it's not harsh. It's more like a firm handshake.
That's a great way to describe it. Those are the tannins from the Cabernet Sauvignon, giving the wine structure. Notice how they balance with the fruit, creating a harmonious feel in your mouth.
Yeah, I'm getting the blackcurrant and plum flavors, and they're not too sweet. There's a nice acidity too. It makes my mouth water.
That acidity is key. It adds freshness and vibrancy. And it's another element that contributes to the wine's ability to age. Now, swallow the wine and pay attention to how long the flavors linger on your palate. That's what we call the finish.
Wow. The flavors are still with me. Even after I've swallowed, again, those dark fruit notes, the cedar.
Even a little spice.
That's a sign of a well-made, complex wine. The longer the finish, the more persistent the flavors, the higher the quality. So we've used our eyes, our nose, and our taste buds. What's the takeaway here? What makes a Bordeaux blend so special?
It's all about that interplay of elements, the fruit, the tannins, the acidity, the oak influences, all coming together in perfect harmony. It's that balance and complexity that makes Bordeaux blends so captivating and so age-worthy.
And now for the fun part, pairing it with food. We've talked about classic pairings like grilled red meats and aged cheeses. But what if I want to get a little more adventurous?
Let's get creative. Remember how Cabernet Franc can have those herbal, earthy notes? We'll try pairing a Cabernet Franc-driven blend with a mushroom risotto or a lentil stew. The earthy flavors of the wine and the dish will complement each other beautifully.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Right.
What about a later style Bordeaux blend? Something with more red fruit and a touch of spice.
That would be lovely with grilled salmon or roast duck. The wine's acidity will cut through the richness of the fish or poultry, while the fruitiness will complement the savory flavors.
Okay, last question. We can't forget about chocolate. Which Bordeaux blend would you recommend for a chocolate pairing?
For a decadent chocolate dessert, I'd reach for a Merlot-dominant blend. With ripe fruit and a velvety texture, the wine's sweetness and the chocolate's bitterness will create a beautiful harmony on your palate.
I'm realizing that there's a whole world of food and wine pairing adventures to be had with Bordeaux blends.
Absolutely. And the best way to discover your own favorite pairings is to experiment. Don't be afraid to try something new. You might be surprised at what you discover.
This deep dive has given me a whole new appreciation for Bordeaux blends. From those first experimental blends in 17th century France to the global phenomenon it is today, it's a truly captivating wine style.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, the world of Bordeaux blends is constantly evolving. There are so many regions, so many styles, so many unique expressions to discover.
So, to our listeners,
Yeah.
we leave you with this. What region will you uncork next? What flavors will you discover? The journey awaits.
Cheers to that.